Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So we already have announced a new lockbox coming. This does mean the Space lockbox will no longer be available on the bazaar, so grab a bunch if you still intend to get enough of those opened. But we have the dev blog right here to showcase them out and give a few details. Already from the get-go, the artwork looks actually pretty cool. It's going to be one of those, I guess, kind of flying mounts, floating mounts as it were. So this will be the Astronautical Lockbox. It will have the Space Guppy School mount and the Flapjack companion. We have a bit of flavor text here, but yes, this will be coming as the second lockbox for module 28, most likely next week Thursday. Here's another picture of the mount. Not so easy to see, but yeah, you're floating as your character surrounded by a school of fish. So jumping into the details of the mount, we can see it's a 4-slot mount. It has a combat power, which is going to be an area of effect, dazing and pulling nearby enemies in, with the equip power of Forte incoming healing plus outgoing healing. But they do say the incoming healing stat overflows the usual mount budget. So I guess it could be having extra stats there. In terms of the slot specifically, we can see you'll be able to get your Warlord's Motivation, getting you the 20% extra bonus item level, but you can get these other bonuses without the preferred. So Protector's Covenant for those tanks, Lionheart's Preservance for the tanks as well, Accursed Resolve, Ignite's Condemnation, and Enchanter's Hex. I would have liked to see more mounts coming out with Tactician's Precision. We currently only have 3 of them. Like, look at the rest of the bonuses. They at least have 5 or 6. Okay, except Survivalist, which only has 4. But this mount document is linked below, and I will add this new mount as soon as we can get our hands on it and just double check that everything is how it says it is. But then for the combat power, we have Schools in Session. So this will allow you to summon, the fish, the mount basically, swarm of them, which will deal 700 magnitude, have a vortex for a duration of 2.5 seconds, and also daze enemies for 4.5 seconds. Slightly less against stronger enemies. Ultimately, it has a 0.6 second post cast animation and then about 0.6 seconds from the button press until the effect actually applies. It will root you, but it's a 80-foot range, 20-foot, 5-foot sphere around the primary target, and it's going to group enemies together, dealing some damage. Maximum only 8 targets though. That's interesting. And the vortex is against enemies that aren't control resistance, and the same priority as the damage. Stronger enemies will break out of the daze earlier. So it's basically an upgrade from what you would have with the legendary flying carpet and... Oops, I fell off. How did that happen? So it's basically an upgrade from the legendary flying carpet with its vortex, 700 magnitude, and that's all it had. This was the legendary mount, so I assume the mythic mount, they're just throwing something extra, which is the daze effect. So I guess it's just the new carpet. That's nice as well that it's already then going to be on Mythic, and it'll be account-wide then for all your alts. You don't need to then get a legendary carpet on each of them and upgrade it. But then we do have the equip bonus, which should have some bonus stats. So yes, it has 2,700 combined rating as normal, but it has 2,250 Forte and incoming healing and outgoing healing. So it's giving 6,750 stats versus what it normally only has at 4,500 stats. For example, Dominant Force, 4,500. This is breaking the norm, but I would assume it's mainly based on the fact that it gives split stats that are not generally that useful for everybody. The Forte will be good, and then the incoming healing is primarily for tanks, and the outgoing healing primarily for healers. But it will help the incoming healing for survivability for everybody, not just tanks, but again, the focus is going to be for tanks. They'll make the most use of that. It's decent, but I don't think for tanks and healers, like they say, it's primarily for healers. I just don't think it's going to be used. Not in endgame, because you're better off just going with an aura where you increase your entire team's ratings, like Runic Aura, Mystic Aura, and then there's even Pack Tactics here. However, we move on to the companion. This is going to be Captain Flumph. He's an NPC usually that we've seen in Wildspace. He's called Flapjack, and in summary he's going to be having a companion enhancement which just gives you 5% combat advantage, and this is going to be instead of the proc version which is 7.5%. It just allows for reliability. There's the defense and utility bonus which is going to be 7.5% stamina regen, and the combat style is going to be ranged AoE with the higher single target damage than most other AoE companions. But we can see the companion enhancement, the enduring senses. Again, it's just that flat 5% combat advantage as long as your companion is summoned and not downed, and that's just it. So it's nice and reliable. It's particularly good for classes which don't have a high hit rate, because that 7.5%, that version is like a 10% chance to trigger in the last 15 seconds, and there's a possibility for you to not have it at the beginning of the fight and not have it in certain periods of the fight. So it can just be better to have more reliable stat boost. Again, that's at mythic quality, 5%. But then with the defense and the utility enhancement, Flumph's inspiration, that's just a flat 7.5% bonus stamina regen. Personally, I think this should be 15% to be more viable to take up a whole slot. Like, I don't really know who would sacrifice an entire slot here just to give that much stamina regen. I don't think the payoff is worth it for that little amount. But at least I guess it's an option and it's somewhat useful. We don't have a lot of sources of stamina regen. But then the combat powers, just some details with regards to his attacks. He's going to have like ranged 80 feet with a radius 15 feet and a cooldown of 2 seconds on his primary attack. The damage of that is going to be based as if it was single target, but it can hit multiple targets within 15 feet. So it has, I guess, a little bit of an advantage there compared to other companions. Then it has Loose the Ballista. So he calls in a ballista strike from the Moon Dancer, dealing AoE damage. This is going to be ranged 80 feet again, radius 15 feet, cooldown 15 seconds. So same combination, single target and ranged budgeting as suppressive fire. So it's interesting. And then crew support, increase allies combat advantage by 5%. What? Range 80 feet as well, radius 80 feet, max targets 20, target prioritization players before NPCs. Basically Tutor 2.0, but even better because the range is 80 feet. Tutor is 50 feet. That's a bit crazy. It also looks like he's going to have a good amount of damage. Tutor was pretty abysmal. If his damage is actually pretty competitive in single target, like it could well be, they're basically creating a favoritism to this companion, giving it single target damage, which can also do multi-target, then yeah, this is definitely going to be replacing the Tutor, and potentially it might even stack with the Tutor. We'll have to see where the meta goes, but in all likelihood, you'll just have this one either or summoned, for now anyway. But yeah, you might be a bit disgruntled if you had still some Tutors to sell, as that price may very well plummet. However, of course, there may still be players out there who are unaware of this new one, who don't watch my videos, and who don't pay attention to what's in the new lockbox, who will probably still go for a Tutor based on guides that are previous to this, which is unfortunate. Make sure you pay attention and keep yourself updated. But in closing, they hope the Space Guppy School mount and the Flapjack companion capture your interest and your heart. They do require an enchanted key to open. They retain the same reward structure as before, including plenty of items that should help you continue to progress your character overall. Which, yeah, is okay, particularly the trade bars, they're always good. And they do say, do you enjoy the option of budget breaking stat value that doesn't synergize with other uses? Or do you feel it may make other mount equip powers strictly worse? How do you feel about companions providing a non-stacking or buff aura at the cost of variety in powers? Are there more niches you'd like to see us fill? Let us know in the forums. And that's it. I personally think they should be very careful with this budget breaking stats value system, because you're basically power creeping. You're making it just better than everything, which is okay in my opinion for when the companion or mount is like the new thing. But I don't know how they could do it, but it shouldn't always be like that, because the more they do that, the more likely down the road they have to like just add more and more and more in order for it to look better. Like I can see why they're doing it. They're trying to make it more appealing. This is fine for now, but down the road, like a few modules, and you try make something else that's going to be more appealing than then say this one, you have to add more on top, which I don't think is that great for the game. So you could add a temporary thing. I don't know how they could do it properly, but it would be something that would provide a boost for, I don't know, like a certain module. And if it's restricted to that module, you gain this bonus, or restricted to certain content, you gain this bonus. Then it has like that more temporary boost that makes it very good for the current content, the current module. That way people will go for it, but you do know that it is temporary. So you can also, if you're a bit tight on a budget, you don't go for it. Then you just wait like few months and it's not that great anymore. Like, you still want it to be viable, you want other companions to be viable versus it as well, but you don't want like this to be the best and then you end up getting in a stuck situation where you have to make something even better than it. It's the same story what happened with the Band of Air, with your Bone Devil's Ribcage. They created these items that just were more powerful than I guess the devs intended them to be, and then they ended up just having to nerf it, because it just feels bad when you have to come along and you just nerf a power so that you can create something better that is not so much better. Like if you have to make something better than this again, then you're just even more alienating everything that's below it. You're just making everything else that a person could use just even more worse compared to it. So you're creating this big gap. But ultimately, that's my 2 cents. I think it's a decent lockbox as it stands for now. The mount looks pretty cool, has some uses, particularly for multi-target grouping up enemies. It's just replacing the legendary flying carpet, so not exactly that unique in that regard. And the companion is just replacing the tutor, so also not that unique in that regard. But at least they're going to be sought after and they're going to be useful. They have a place in the game. But it's a bit disappointing when things just directly replace something else. And that's just really directly replacing it. And I still would have liked to see another Tactician's Precision bonus mount. We really need another one of those. Like, there's currently only the Demon Wings available. The Neverwinter's Hand, sure, it might come around at the Jubilee again. And the Dark Butterfly Wings, we don't know. But once again, thanks for watching. A special thank you to all these channel members. And we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.